Jonathan Gale, John Gale, and this is my GBC tower. I've yet to think of a better name for it. Quite a few people have suggested things, but nothing's really kind of stuck. I built a slightly smaller version of this a year ago for a small show in aid of a local scout group. And then I decided that it wasn't complicated enough, so I would make it about a foot taller and a bit more complicated. So
GBC is just too simple. You've got to further complicate it to challenge yourself.
GBC is too simple, yeah. This is only the third GBC module that I've ever built. I've not yet built one to instructions, so I kind of make things up, as you may have guessed. This certainly isn't instructions. I initially decided that I would try and just build a single ring and have a single ring of track driven. And then I realised that, hey, if I've got one ring of track, I might as well have two. And then, well, if you've got two, you might as well go for 5. So that was kind of the inspiration with it. Having built it at the show a year ago, I then decided that it would probably be a good idea to actually have it motorised on a turntable. And I would actually say this is your fault. Because I actually saw a Beyond the Brick video where you had a Mortal Engines build, big city, and I thought you were about to show us that the thing was going to drive, and then you said, no, it's just static. And I thought, maybe I can put this on wheels and make it drive, and then I thought, no, that would be no good because I won't be able to get balls into it, but at least I can make it rotate. So the turntable is being driven on 32 individually axled wedge belt wheels. So each of the wheels has got an individual little axle in the base. The base unit itself is 9 kilos, which is about 20 pounds in weight. And then the main tower, the moving part of the tower, is 50 kilos, which is probably about 110 pounds, if my maths is right. It's about 8.5 feet tall, about 2.5 meters tall. It's 30 to 40,000 pieces at least. Just the rings are primarily LEGO train track. The train track itself is then held together using a snot technique, so studs not on top because the train track is facing outwards, and entirely made with transparent parts. Transparent parts, you're a bit limited in terms of studs not on top, so it's the transparent clear headlight bricks that are actually allowing us to do that. There's about 4,500 transparent clear headlight bricks in there, just in the rings, and the rings themselves have 20,000 transparent clear pieces. They were built by relatives, family, friends, anybody I could feel like in terms of little modules, because each of the rings is made up of loads of subsections. So I built some standardized modules, took them along to a meetup for some other LEGO fans, and when we were there, I handed over a whole bunch of transparent pieces and said, okay, I need 40 of these, I need 60 of these, I need 160 of these, and had a lot of assistance that way. My nieces helped, so they're aged from 4 to 12 now, and they all helped me over the last year or so, put bits together when I saw them. They've helped me build the legs of the tower as well. What else? So the base of the tower, that was the first thing. I hadn't actually planned for how I would get the balls onto the tower until I'd started building it and when it was rotating. And of course, because the tower's rotating, I can't just feed it from a standard GBC height. So I had to build a horizontal ring to actually catch the balls. So that added a whole load more pieces. Again, it's all LEGO. There's no non-LEGO in here. I've used a brick bending technique around the outside to actually get the circular structure, and that gives it quite a bit of strength. There's quite a lot of technique holding it in place in that actual base. And you can get a kind of roulette wheel effect sometimes where the ball will actually spin all the way around the outside when they land in. I'm thinking maybe for next year I might put some fans on the outside to spin the balls around and get them moving, but ran out of time for this year. Underneath that ring, there's actually some 12-volt train track, which I'm going to plan to use again in a future thing to actually provide power to the tower, because I can't plug this thing into the mains electric supply because it's rotating. So if I put a cable on it, it will be like the AT-AT from Empire Strikes Back, and its legs would get tied up. So that probably wouldn't be a good idea. Initially, it was powered by 4 LEGO XL motors, and then I realised with the height of it and the weight, it just wasn't providing enough power. So I'm actually driving 4 XL motors in the base, which is static. That's driving the large new Technic quarter gear rack pieces, the banana gears as they're called. That actually is what pushes the tower around. And then I've got another 4 XL motors built into the tower itself that are running off of a rechargeable battery. The batteries last about 3 hours, and then I swap the batteries over, charge up the next lot, and run those off that, charge the first ones up, and run it over again. Takes me about 2 minutes to change the batteries because I have to kind of stick my hands up inside it. It's like some crazy operation. But then we get it going again, and off it goes. 5 rings, the balls drop into the base. They then drop into the first ring, and the rings then slowly rotate. The balls get carried up inside little transparent containers effectively in the rings, and they then get dropped into the next ring. That ring then carries up, they rotate, gets dropped into the next ring, repeat that 5 times. Eventually you get up to the top section there, and they drop out onto a little track out. That can take quite a large dump of balls in one go, and it still pumps them out one at a time onto the downward spiral track. And that downward spiral track, I think there's just over 30 meters worth of track that actually runs the balls back down again, as you can see them spiraling around the outside. It's quite good with the orange balls against the white track. I had white balls on it at a previous show and you couldn't see it as well, so I'm quite glad we had the orange balls out today. It's primarily white because white is the colour I happen to have got cheap from LEGO at a previous event, so had a lot of that, and most of the bits are either from LEGO Direct, from shows, or from the pick-a-brick walls in my local store. There's at least 8 large cups of 1x4 plates, just as one example, and 6 large cups of 2x2 plates, so there's an awful lot of LEGO in there. That's probably about it. That's about what I can say, I think, for now. The actual drive unit, thinking about it, the drive unit for the rings. So each of the rings is sitting on 4 of the Technic wedge belt wheels. The wedge belt wheels then have a horizontal axle that then meets with 2 45-degree bevel gears. And then there's a large axle that's running roughly 6 feet, so 2 meters up inside the structure of each leg. The legs are 10 studs wide by 10 studs wide, and they've actually got a 6x6 gap inside them. So for a future expansion, I may decide to run conveyor belts or something inside the legs as well. But
there just isn't enough going on. We've got to have more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one for maybe a future show. So watch this space. If it doesn't implode under its own weight, it may get even crazier in future. That's the kind of plan. And then, of course, having done that, I realised that I didn't really have a way to get the balls back off of this thing because, again, it's rotating, and I suddenly realised there wasn't a hole in the base and no way for me to get the balls off. So I was considering just dropping them from wherever they ended up and just having an even larger thing on the ground to catch them. And then I realised that I could use the fact that the legs are hollow, drop the balls back inside one of the legs at the bottom, and then they actually come out and then drop into another ring. So there's actually a brick and plate built ring underneath. So that's using the new 1x2 rounded Lego plates that form a nice circle. So there's 160 little degrees around that circle. That's then angled so that it slopes down and runs the balls out. And then again, I realised that I needed to build something to get them back up to table height, because at 2.5 meters, at 8.5 feet tall, I didn't think it would be a good idea to have this module stood on a table. I thought that might present a health and safety hazard, so hence why it's on the floor. But it does mean I need to bring it back up to the table. So I actually copied the 2018 Brickworld ball pump, the basic design for the piston function at the bottom of a ball pump, beefed up that ball pump quite significantly, made it a lot taller, and got it back to table height, reused the large Technic structure track, which actually just runs the balls across and provides a nice barrier to the public so that kids don't walk into it. And that actually just provides a nice sort of frame to the front of it. Did some brick-built lettering on the front of it with my name and the GBC tower and please don't touch. Primarily because I actually didn't have enough Technic pieces to make a Technic structure, so I needed to make it out of plates. And then I had a big sea of plates and thought, oh, I know what I can do with those. Let's put something on there. And then I think that probably is it. Getting the balls onto it was just a quick tower. That was just knocked up fairly quickly just to make something work, something that I can pack into the boxes. This thing, as you can see, it's pretty big. Transporting it is a challenge. There's 2 large boxes just down here behind the tower. Lovely, strong storage boxes. These are really useful boxes, they're called, and they're extra strong. 2 of these take most of the tower. There's a 100-litre carry-on bag thing that I've got as well that takes some extra bits that don't quite fit in the boxes. And then all of this lot went onto a big trolley that's under a table over there, and that trolley came to the show with me yesterday via 5 trains.
5 trains, wow.
So, and that was entertaining. And then I discovered that Paddington Station in London, the underground doesn't actually have a lift. So I got a bit of a workout carrying these boxes. about 50 pounds each. By the time everything else is in them. So I think the heaviest one's about 50 pounds. So carrying that up and down a couple of flights of stairs was an entertaining thing yesterday on the way.
That is some serious dedication transporting it here. How long does it take you to get it all set up when you come to the show?
It takes about 2 hours. So it takes from about an hour and a half. If I haven't come by train, if I've come in a car, then I don't need to break it into as many small pieces. So saves me some setup time. This time it probably took me about 2.5 hours. So a little bit longer this time, but it was quite nice because we could set up last night, so I didn't have to rush it, and it meant I could sit around and chat to people while I was doing it. And I actually took a time-lapse video of that last night, kind of showing the setup process. And I built it not inside the table area, and then had the kind of nerve-wracking moment of pushing it into place once it was assembled. But that's easier than trying to build it in situ, because all of these track pieces on the outside have to be connected one at a time. You have to put them on in order. I think there's 29 of them that have to go on one after the other, and you can see it kind of spirals up as you build it. And I think that probably is about it.
That's a great run through. Thank you so much. I mean, this thing is just incredible. It's the Tower of Insanity, I think you can call it here.
Yeah, I think maybe the viewers can give it some names in the comments. Maybe the best one will be what it will be called next year. So
with all these moving parts, what tends to be the area that kind of struggles the most, or maybe has the most tendency to break down as everything's moving here?
So it's actually been remarkably well behaved. I built it for a really small show with only about 400 visitors a couple of weeks ago originally, and then realised there was a new show that was being put on in London for the first time. So that was the next day, and I realised, hey, let's just take a risk and put my name in for that one as well, and hope it survives the first day. And it did. It just pretty much ran non-stop. I have to change the batteries after a few hours. I did that a couple of times. That was good. When I first build it, it does have a tendency of throwing balls all over the place, because the corners of the down track have to be lined up quite nicely, otherwise the balls get fired out. But you soon realise where things are flying off from, and then you can just fix those elements. The one issue is sometimes if there is a jam further up in the stream of balls coming in, and a large lump of balls come in at once, you can end up with potentially 3 or 4 pounds worth in weight of balls arrive. And that means that this tower is trying to lift 3 or 4 pounds of balls, which makes it struggle a little bit. Even with 8 extra large motors, because it's pushing 110 pounds worth of Lego around, it's still got a challenge to actually get the weight of that. That extra few pounds or kilos of balls means that it slows down. Because it slows down, it means that even more balls end up in the cups, which means it runs even slower. So every now and again it does that, but it's basically pretty well behaved.
What are some tips you'd have maybe for somebody who's looking to build big GBC like this, maybe go a little larger? What did you find as you were going through kind of trial and error, and what worked here?
I'd probably say my first tip is don't. It's just literally stopped right now, which is an unusual thing, so going to give it a bit of a shove. I think to save the gears, I'm just going to have to dive down there and turn it off, so if you can bear with me for a minute.
Right.